What's up, everybody? You're very welcome along, and we've finally named the show. So we've been calling it the Anfield Agenda podcast for the last God knows how long, but we've decided there's three of us. I look a bit Dara O'Brienish. We need a catchy name, so we came up with Cop the Week. So that's what we're going to call this show moving forward, Cop the Week. And as always, I'm over the moon to be joined by Mr. Steve Bland and Mr. Jack Gill. Steve, I'll come to you first, buddy. How has it been since we last spoke?
Oh, goodness, what's been going on? Yeah, it's been good. Well, it's been a bit wet, hasn't it? Over this way, anyway. It's been a bit wet, but yeah, it's been working away. A couple of good matches at the weekend. Good to see fans back. So yeah, spirits are high.
And Mr. Gill, you have experienced the new ticketing system in and around Anfield. You were at the Osasuna game yesterday. Tell us about your experience.
The ticketing stuff wasn't the worst thing last night. The issue was the traffic in and around Liverpool. That was the issue for me. But yeah, it was so good to be back. I can't explain the feeling of, walking through the turnstiles and back out into the seats of Anfield and just to watch a game of live football and to see, the lads in action, some beautiful moments in that game last night as well. I thought, well, we'll talk in more depth in a minute, but it was so good to be back.
Yeah, it was great to see that youngster, that unknown forward coming through, bagging a couple in Bobby Firmino. I mean, great to see the young man shining. But no, in all seriousness, what a ball from Tsimikas into him. I don't know where you were sitting, Jack, but you were in the King Kenny stand, weren't you? The Kenny stand. I mean, what a goal! What a cross! What a goal! What a performance, actually, from those boys, particularly in the first half.
Yeah, outstanding. I was lucky. I was towards the Anfield Road end, so all the goals were my side of the pitch. And there were some fantastic performances last night. I thought Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain looked back at his best. I was really, really impressed with him. Tsimikas, I think he has been, personally, I think he's been the star of pre-season. I think in terms of consistency, in every single game, he's really impressed me. And it's really good going into the season, especially knowing that Robbo's going to miss the first three games or so. There was other fantastic things to see as well. Bobby getting on the score sheet, 2 goals for him. I was really impressed with that. Minamino as well. He's almost been a forgotten man. You name Liverpool attackers. You seem to forget Minamino at the minute, but a goal for him yesterday. And yeah, so many positives to take from the game, in my opinion. Kanate as well. Pass.
That was where I was going with the Steve next. Steve, I mean, what about that pass from Kanade? I mean, it was Van Dijk-esque.
It was sensational, wasn't it? I think it's been really interesting looking at the two teams and the way that the teams have been split up over these two friendlies, particularly. He's clearly looking at combinations, isn't he? And you can get kind of different ideas. I think you'd have decent odds on the front three from the game on Sunday being the front three for the game, the first game of the season. But then, Firmino scored a couple. So he's not going without a fight, is he? So, it's I think we weren't doom and gloom last week, but, certainly when you think about more of the transfer-y stuff, it's easy to get a bit carried away and a bit, moping around a bit with the lack of incomings. And actually what you see on the pitch, there's an awful lot to be upbeat about and an awful lot to look forward to this season. And like Jack says, there's, 2 or 3 players, well, more than 2 or 3, 4 or 5 players that maybe we'd, not written off, but maybe hadn't been completely convinced about them being up to the standard. Tsimikas and Minamino are good examples. So he's come good at the right time, hasn't he, with Robertson's injury as well. So
I suppose playing devil's advocate though, Steve, this isn't things that we didn't already know. Me personally, I've always known that there's a player behind Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain. We've always known that there's a player behind players like Naby Keita.
100%,
it's about keeping them fit, and I think that's the worry for a lot of fans, including myself, going into the season when we don't see any signings, because it's not about the ability of this squad, because I believe that we have for its money, we have the strongest squad in the Premier League. Obviously, we can't compete with City, who have the amount of cash they spend on their bench. But in terms of
bastards, sorry.
in terms of money wise, we certainly have the best value for money squad in the Premier League. But it would be nice to see an addition or two before the end of the window.
But I said this.
We will get to that. We'll definitely get to that, folks, in the chat. Sorry, I'll come to Steve for his point now, but I know people want transfer talk. We will get there. And for the one person who asked about the Mbappe blow, mate, every title that we use is taken from context or a headline from somewhere else. So there's always a reason. But sorry, Steve, go on.
I'm just going to say that I said this a few times in the pod last season. I said, and I've said it before when we're talking about Wijnaldum replacements. I've said over and over and over that I don't think it's a massive priority because there are players who have got the ability to step up and fill that gap, and Oxlade-Chamberlain has absolutely been a massive favourite of mine for the whole time he's been at Liverpool. I think he's got absolutely everything. He's good on the ball, he's got good energy, he'll score you a goal from midfield, which we don't have a lot of. And he can play a lot of different positions as well, and he'll do a job all over the place. So yeah, I think he's a really good player, and I know it's a massive if, but if you keep him and Naby Keita fit, between them, there's going to be a player there somewhere, isn't there? We're going to get something out of one of them at least. So yeah.
even if you just make sure they both don't get injured at the same time. If we try and
can we just take a second to really appreciate quite how good Chamberlain was yesterday? Because I mean, there's having a good game and all of that, but this was Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain, like a man with a point to prove, a man that trusts his body, a man that, as Klopp said, has now got the full preseason under his belt, and a man that looks like prime Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain from when Coutinho left. Steve, I'm excited and nervous at the same time, but the potential is undoubtable.
Yeah, I mean, look, this is a guy that in the last World Cup, if it hadn't been for his injury, would have been one of the first names on the team sheet for Gareth Southgate. He loves him, and I think his big injury came just at the wrong time, didn't it? Because he was just making a massive impact. We know the goals against City, and that injury came just at the wrong time because he was making a massive impact, and he was near enough a fixture, wasn't he? And I think someone's made a really good point in the comments about how durable Wijnaldum was, and that's one of the big things that is very difficult to replace, because he was I mean, you probably count the number of games he missed through injury on one hand in his whole time at Liverpool. He was so durable, and I think that's ability wise, you wouldn't say Keita or Oxlade-Chamberlain have got an issue ability wise against Wijnaldum, either of them. But it's just that durability, isn't it? Can they play a full season? Can they be there when the team really needs them towards the end, when it's been a tough season over Christmas, over the New Year period? Are they gonna stay fit? I guess only time will tell.
This is a huge gamble, Jack, isn't it? This is the big gamble, mate. Like we've seen this before. We've seen the Naby Keita, Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain potential before, but as Steve has said, nobody can look 6-7 months down the line, 4 months down the line, and guarantee us that these boys will stay fit. And while that's the case, I think, Jack, this is where the transfer necessity, or at least our thinking about needing a player or two, comes from.
Well, Oxlade-Chamberlain was playing like a man with confidence from managing to get Perry Edwards pregnant, wasn't he? That's what he was playing like yesterday.
At least we know why he was dancing up them steps now, anyway.
Exactly. To be honest, it's so good to see. It was like I was at the Roma game where he unfortunately got that injury, and it was like watching that Oxlade-Chamberlain again. It really was, and like Steve said, he was in such good form at that time when he picked up that injury, and since then, unfortunately, his career at the club has been very stop-start, fueled, with a lot of injuries along the way, and not really regular game time because of the squad we've now got. And it's been difficult for him, but if he can keep fit, keep this form, I'm sure he'll notice himself getting a lot more game time and going up in the pecking order. And with Shaqiri going too, Hopefully we see more of him in that midfield role that we know is his preferred role, rather than out on the wing, where sometimes I think he can get a bit lost. We know he prefers in that 8, and yesterday he played there, and he showed Klopp that he's a valuable option for us to have. And I thought he was really, really exciting last night, and there was a couple of good efforts from distance as well. And I thought he really, really deserved the goal last night, and he walked off that pitch, and he should have had his head held high, because that was the only thing missing from his performance last night.
I want to touch on this comment I brought up on the screen now, and it's not because I agree or disagree. I think it's just a good talking point. And let's go back to what Steve alluded to with the fact that we'd seen 2 different teams over 2 nights, and therein shows the squad depth. Now, I have to say, they were 2 fairly strong teams that were put out over the course of the 2 nights. So I don't think to say our squad depth is shocking is necessarily true. I just think that there are 1 or 2 areas where the drop-off is a little bit steeper than in other areas, Steve. That's the way I view it anyway. Yeah,
I kind of agree. I don't in any way think it's shocking. I wouldn't agree with that at all. What I think we've got a lot of is players that come in and look really good when the rest of the team is playing well. So you think of the season won the league, the season won the Champions League before that. You had guys like Origi, guys like Shaqiri, Oxlade-Chamberlain, catered to a degree. They were coming into a team that was absolutely on fire, and they were slotting in, playing a game here. He could rotate. There was so much confidence in the team. What we found last year was that when the main men weren't doing it every week, and you were looking to those players to come on and change a game, then they're not at that level. They're not going to change a game. They're not going to be an alternative. The same way that City have, they can bring on Mahrez, or they bring on Sterling, or Bernardo Silva, or Gabriel Jesus, or all the talent that can genuinely change a game. We didn't have that. Those players that could change a game. We had ones that could kind of supplement a good team that was going well. So I think there is definitely an issue, with the drop off, like you say, in some of the areas, particularly probably the forward areas, and maybe fullback areas as well. We'll see how Tsimikas does, but it's certainly not shocking. I wouldn't go as far as that.
Jack, I want to get straight to the Messi stuff, because a lot of people in the chat are asking me, what's the Mbappe news? Because there's headlines Liverpool have been dealt Mbappe blow. And look, it boils down to this, really. As things currently stand, we know that Messi has now passed his medical in Paris, will be unveiled as a PSG player for 2 years. But I guess the blow that people are talking about is, I think it comes from the Echo or elsewhere, where people have said that, Liverpool have been dealt a blow because it looks like Kylian Mbappe might see out the last year of his contract in Paris, playing alongside Neymar and Messi. And I guess if that is the case, it's a roll of the dice from PSG to try and convince him that he can achieve everything he wants to do there. But I have to say, mate, as a football fan and a bit of a romantic, I can't look at that and think that if that team goes out there and wins anything, that it's anything other than basically a cheat code, because there's no way that they can make those numbers add up, particularly at a club like PSG. This isn't a club steeped in tradition. This isn't a club like Manchester United or Bayern Munich or Liverpool or Juventus that have been around since the dawn of time. It's a club that was formed in the 70s. It's a club that is a fashionable club, and it is a club that is doing nothing but throw money it does not generate at players to try and build a Galactico squad. And I will argue to the death with anybody who thinks anything otherwise.
Yeah, I think it's one of them, isn't it, where we beat PSG in the Champions League final next summer, and then Klopp does his work after the game in persuading Mbappe to join us on a free transfer. But no, it's a scary thought looking at that PSG team this season. There was a tweet that I saw yesterday about playing with Paris Saint-Germain on FIFA 22, which is just going to be a cheat code. Like you said, the whole team is a cheat code. They've somehow managed to get the captain of Real Madrid and the captain of Barcelona. They've got Donnarumma on a free, Wijnaldum on a free, Messi on a free, or to add to already Mbappe, Neymar, Ramos on a free as well. The talent they already had in abundance.
Hakimi for 60 million as well.
It's ridiculous, and we're talking about a club that has been let off time and time again. How they didn't get a punishment for what happened in the window when they managed to get Neymar for 200 million and also find a way around getting Mbappe in the same window. I have no idea, but now they know that they can get away scot-free with absolutely anything. And FFP is clearly non-existent anymore. And that brings me back to what we said on the last podcast the other week, where, I said that we are in danger of falling behind because, unfortunately, it's been going that way for years. But this is the summer, and this has been the year with all the Super League stuff where we're seeing money really accelerate, and money in football now has become colossal. And, at the end of the day, we're all just legacy fans.
Steve, we've seen some cleverness, some skullduggery behind the scenes here as well, with PSG staying away from the Super League fiasco and somehow finding their way or onto the UEFA board or the UEFA committee. And look, mate, none of this stuff is accidental. It's happened, it's planned. But, you're somebody who's a level-headed person, Steve. I look at PSG's fan base worldwide, and they've been excellent with their branding around Nike and the crossover stuff that they've done with Air Jordan. And undoubtedly they sell a lot of shirts, but with the TV revenue being on its knees as it is in the French league, with the fact that they've never won a Champions League, how can they afford it? In your head, do you realistically think that an accountant could sit down and make these numbers really work?
No, I mean, there's no way, is there? There's just no way. And I think, there'll be so many questions over this that will come to the point where either they'll have to say something, or the powers that be will have to say something, because they'll have to explain this, because it just makes no sense, does it? I mean, FFP is all about sustainability, isn't it? And you're not going to tell me that PSG, from shirt sales or from ticket sales or from worldwide, all the money that comes in from whatever football clubs make their money from worldwide, they won't even be a tenth of Liverpool or United or Real Madrid or Barcelona. These genuinely big clubs with genuine big followings. It'll be a tiny fraction of the revenue that comes in from that sort of thing. So I don't get it at all. And I love Lionel Messi, but I just there's just nothing about this that gets me excited at all. Absolutely nothing. Like it just doesn't excite me one little bit, and I can't imagine it excites him that much either. Going to Troyes on a Thursday night, or whatever.
I think it's fair to say probably won't play half the league games.
Yeah, every chance in there. There's save him for the Champions League and try and win that, and that's the holy grail for them, isn't it?
Can I just say though, he was even taking the piss out of defenses in La Liga last season. The numbers he's going to register in Liga and are going to be absolutely ridiculous. He will take the absolute piss out of what will be League One players in the English pyramid. But yeah, it's a weird move. Part of me would have liked to see Messi in the Premier League just to experience it. But also part of me would hate it because there was no chance he was ever going to come to Liverpool, and that means joining a rival. But yeah, it like Steve said, it's not an exciting move. And it's a very strange one.
Here's the numbers that I've seen floating around. Messi, 52 million a year before tax. Neymar, over 30 million euro a year before tax. Gigi, 12 million a year. Donnarumma, 14 million a year. And this is before we look at the likes of whatever Hakimi's on, Di Maria's on, Icardi's on, Kimpembe's on, Marquinhos is on.
Icardi, you mentioned players like Icardi, and they're not even going to be in with a sniff of playing a game this year, are they? And Icardi's, sensational centre forward.
It's and Keylor Navas has to be one of the most unlucky goalkeepers in the world with his moves, by the way.
I'm wondering if Inter Milan, obviously they're losing Lukaku, if they go in for Icardi and try and re-sign Icardi.
Yeah, we have heard that, Jack, that PSG plan on trying to balance all of this by selling up to 10 players, but we heard that from the Guardiola speak as well about planning on getting 60 million from selling youth team players. And look, I mean, it just stinks to high heaven to me, lads. And people can say it's saltiness or bitterness, but I don't see how it is, because it doesn't really impact us. It impacts us in one competition, maybe, if we get drawn against PSG. It doesn't feel right. But what it may do is have a domino effect into the transfer market, and I suppose that's where we have to go with this as Liverpool fans. And my, naivety, Jack, I thought that this would be the catalyst to say that, okay, look, surely I didn't think PSG were going to be even as cheeky to think that we can keep Mbappe if Messi comes in. I didn't think even they would have the balls to try and make those numbers add up. I thought this was a surefire way we would see Mbappe go Madrid or elsewhere, wherever. We all dreamt of Liverpool, but to think of those three lining up together, to think of UEFA being able to sit back and allow this to happen, and to say it's easy to fall out of football, a love of football these days. I mean, these are the reasons why. It is nothing but financial fuckery of the highest order.
They're playing a fucking video game, aren't they? That is literally what they're doing. They're splashing the cash around. It's as if they've got both blue properties on the Monopoly board, and they're just sticking a load of fucking hotels on them.
Never get both blue properties on Monopoly, Jack. Everyone knows that.
It depends who you're playing with. Yeah, it's.
How do you feel like if they win a Champions League? Let's say they do win the Champions League, and for the record, I hope themselves and Manchester City never lift the Champions League. But let's say that they do win the Champions League, the whole world outside of PSG fans are going to just stick two fingers up to it and go, "You can fuck your Champions League. It's irrelevant as far as the rest of us are concerned."
Yeah, I mean that's it, isn't it? I mean that's but I wouldn't imagine there's too many people inside Paris Saint-Germain that give a monkeys about that. They don't give a toss, do they? They're in there just, they've got more money than sense, and you're going to pile as much as they can into it until they get exactly what they want. And
they really have shown a dose of karma to Barcelona, Steve, haven't they, for those celebrations after that comeback? They took Neymar, and now they're after getting Messi. I mean, if they wanted to prove a point, I think it's fair to say that they've proved a point in that sense anyway. I mean, but look, let's look at what we can look at, gents, and the Liverpool side of things with the transfer window and the time remaining. We've seen a few names thrown around, Jack, again, ins and outs. Shaqiri may be off to Lyon, even though Jean-Michel Aulas is basically offering a curly whirly and a £5 home and bargains voucher.
Might take that.
So sorry, the connection went weird. What are you saying, Craig?
I was talking about the Liverpool transfer business and how we've seen Lyon linked to Shaqiri and Jean-Michel Aulas basically offering a £5 home and bargains voucher and a curly whirly compared to the price that Liverpool want from. Do we think something can be done here, or will Lazio sneak back in?
I think he'll definitely be sold this summer. We know our history with Leon and Aulas, don't we? So who knows what's going to happen there. I think Lazio will probably come back in. I do think that we may have to settle for less than our valuation for Shaqiri in the end. But at the end of the day, I just hope a deal can be done for Shaqiri, because I think there's a decent player there, and I think he deserves more game time, and I think he's a player that could really impress in a league like the French league. It's one where it'd be interesting if he goes there, does his medical, and has a knee injury that no one knows about, and end up coming back, similarly to the Fekir deal a few years ago.
He doesn't have a brother, does he, that wants to be signed up, Shaqiri, that we don't know about?
It will be interesting actually as well if we are interested in a Genie replacement. I wonder if we've mentioned the troubles with money in the French league. But it may be that something can be done, with Aouar as a part exchange or something to do with that. So that might be worth keeping an eye on. But yeah, it's hopefully he can get a deal over the line, because then it helps our problems with non-homegrown talents.
That would be interesting. One. Uar would be a good one, because I've said before that I don't think we need a like-for-like replacement for Gini Wijnaldum, but what I do think there could be, scope for is a proper number 10, a Coutinho, a clever little, player between the lines. So, yeah, so that's where I would give you the caveat of a Wijnaldum replacement.
So when we look at this landscape, and we've talked about a Wijnaldum replacement, we talk about a wide attacking player. Which one, if any of these voids, Jack, does Harvey Elliott fill, or does he fill any of them?
Anywhere. Harvey Elliott is going to be an important member of the squad this season, in my opinion. And we spoke the other day, Craig, when we did that duo late night agenda, that we wouldn't be surprised to see Harvey Elliott on the starting team sheet against Norwich this weekend. I genuinely wouldn't. And he's really impressed me in that central midfield role. I think it'd be good to see him in a 4-2-3-1. He can either play off the right or in that 10 role. I think he can be a really, really important option for us this season. I think he has the ability to change games for the bench. He's so exciting, really exciting young talent, and I think sky's the limit for that young lad. And I really think, he had a bit of a breakthrough season last year in the fact that he got his first full season really of game time at a first team level at Blackburn Rovers in the Championship, and I believe the kid is ready to come and show the world that he's capable of doing it in the Premier League. And with the players still have around him at Liverpool Football Club, I think he's going to impress this season. I really, really do. He's shown Jurgen Klopp that he's a diverse player. He can play in numerous different roles in that side. Klopp seems to like him in that midfield role that he's played in pre-season as well. And yeah, I see Harvey Elliott getting quite a few minutes in the Premier League for Liverpool this season.
Steve, me and Jack had a conversation the other day, and part of it was clipped up and put out onto Twitter and provoked some reactions. And we were talking about Harvey Elliott, and Jack said that Harvey Elliott will be up there with the great British talents like, who did you use as the example at the time? Phil Foden. And people laughed at it, but I agree with Jack. I think when we look back at Harvey Elliott in 2 years' time, he will be mentioned with the Fodens, with the Mounts, with the Sanchos. I think he's been slept on by a lot of opposition fans who don't realise quite what a baller this kid is.
Oh, he's a absolutely sensational talent. There's no question about it. I love his brain. He has a proper football brain, doesn't he? He's clever, really, really, really clever, and he's got a proper arrogance about him as well. Like a nice arrogance. I don't mean like he looks like he's too cocky, but he has a football swagger about him, doesn't he? Like a real. He looks really confident in his own ability. I said this last. I don't want to keep saying that I said things on the pod before, but I said during last season that I think he'll come back in and he'll play a big part next season, this season coming, because I think he's that good, and I think he just needed that year of first team football to toughen him up a little bit, give him a bit of a better idea. He goes away. He's a year older, obviously now as well. I think he's the real deal, and I think there's I don't know, 4 or 5 kind of kids in this country that, if we're still calling Phil Foden a kid, but there's 4 or 5 of them. Who are, if they don't become, proper superstars, something's gone wrong. Someone has made a mistake, and Elliott is one of them. Phil Foden, Elliott, Mason Greenwood, I think, is another one. Jude Bellingham,
footballer, yeah.
Jude Bellingham, maybe. There's 4 or 5 of them that are genuine, proper players.
I think, and I could get laughed at for this, but I honestly think in a few years, or at the end of the careers, we're looking at, Foden versus Harvey Elliott as a sort of Gerrard versus Lampard sort of kind of dynamic. I honestly think both of them are going to be up there. I think the clip that was put out on Twitter and the reaction showed, the dangers of social media, really, because I think anyone with a brain would engage it and use it in the fact that I'm not saying with what we see at face value now from both players, but obviously Harvey Elliott is a year or 2 behind Phil Foden. He's not got anywhere near as much game time as Phil Foden has under his belt, and I believe once he's got that, once he's had full seasons playing under Jurgen Klopp and with the first team and playing with the players around him that he's got, that's when he'll relish, and that's when he'll get better and better and better. And he's definitely, like you said, Steve, he's got the mind for it, he's got the ability, he's got the passion, he's got everything. He wants to make it. He knows the ability he's got, and he will make it to the very, very top. And I genuinely believe that with Harvey Elliott. And we as fans, as Liverpool fans, we have to be patient because, you know, I know before we've done stuff like this with the likes of Ryan Brewster and stuff like that, where we've been at fault for, you know, overhyping players like this. But I think,
mate, go back even further. Go back to you know, guys like Mark Kennedy. I remember buying him from Millwall to great fanfare, and he was going to be the next.
I played against him.
Well,
I played against Mark Kennedy when he was in the Dublin leagues.
You know, we bought him from Millwall for a couple of million, and he was going to be. You know, everyone was touting him to be the next, you know, great big superstar, and he wasn't. So there's definitely a caveat. There's a word of, you know, a bit of caution in there, isn't it? But you don't get the impression with Harvey Elliott that he's the sort of lad who, you know, will get too carried away. There's a danger, isn't there, of building them up too much, and they start believing their own hype. I
think the thing as well is, Steve, Pep knew what he was doing with Foden. He had a plan. Foden was willing to accept it and be patient. And I think Harvey Elliott and Klopp have a similar plan. And I think Harvey will see what has happened with Phil Foden. Will have seen that patience will be rewarded. And as Jack said as well, he absolutely idolises, loves the club, and will do everything he can. I wanted to. Sorry, Jack. You have another point on this one?
That's what I think with Harvey Elliott. There's an aura about him, something that feels different to talents that we've picked up before. You know, I remember us saying that I was better than Sterling when we sold Sterling, and look what happened there. But it's just everything surrounding Harvey Elliott, everything we see, the footballing brain he's got. There's a proper player there. There really is a proper player there, and I think. Injuries permitted, ensuring that he can stay fit over the next few years and doesn't get any big injuries. There is a world-class player there. I genuinely believe that.
Brian in the chat, Brian Morrissey's put in Richie Partridge too. When I was growing up, Richie Partridge he's from the borough I grew up in Dublin, and he was known around our area as the guy that was going to make it. He was head and shoulders above everyone. And I think he's working at that world-class facility in Qatar at the minute as a physio, if my memory is correct. He was part of the Liverpool setup, but I'm fairly sure Richie and his family have moved across to that. I want to talk about something that one has kind of got. I responded to something on Twitter about it earlier on. I've seen a couple of comments in the chat. Seems like there are two camps, Steve. There is the you're all in out FSG camp, or you're the FSG apologist camp, and that sometimes people won't allow us to be nuanced and, you know, understand that there are some good and some bad points to everything. And I think this goes wider than just football. You can put it into politics, you can put it into religion, into anything. We are Liverpool fans. We are not FSG fans. We are not FSG apologists. We want what we believe is best for the club and only ever give our opinions from what we hope to be a realistic standpoint and try to be fair about them.
100%. I mean, we're black and white these days, aren't we? You're Brexit or you're not. You're a vax or you're not, or an anti-vaxxer. You know, black and white. We don't like nuance because it doesn't play well on social media. Where we like people coming from one side or the other. I think, you know, I guess it probably doesn't. You know, when I used to work for 5 Live, and you used to set up a debate on something, what you didn't want is two people with, you know, similar nuanced kind of views. You wanted people that were going to have a proper debate, arguing both sides of the argument. And maybe that's kind of, you know, that's it, you know, carrying on from that. But yeah, no, I totally agree. And I said this last season. When it comes to FSG, you've got to be. Oh, sorry, my dog's just whinging. You've got to be really, really, really careful what you wish for when it comes to FSG, because in the realms of you know, football club owners, they are, you know, not even top 20 for worst offenders, are they? I mean, they're right down the list. And I'm you know, call me naive, whatever. I tend to like to see the best in people. And people make mistakes, of course they do, but I sort of genuinely am inclined to believe that they do have the club's best interests in mind, while earning a few quid as well.
I'm still
Messi's been confirmed, by the way, just as we speak. Breaking number 30.
I'm still very much in the, I'm still very much annoyed at FSG. And I do worry about the lack of investment. I really, really do. But on the other side, I can understand where Steve's coming from in the fact that, you've got owners like the PSG ones, the Manchester City ones that are destroying football. And, I think a lot of people who want FSG out are hypocrites in the fact that they want, owners like PSG and Manchester City have. And for me, that's not how Liverpool should be run. It wouldn't represent the city. It wouldn't represent the football club. And yeah, like Steve said, there's very annoying things about FSG. I haven't forgiven them at all for the Super League stuff. They've made mistakes time and time again, but the grass isn't always greener on the other side. And for me, like Steve said, we could do a lot worse. And there are worries right now, and the lack of investment is a strong worry for me right now. But there's loads worse, and you only just have to look at owners like, like Newcastle with Mike Ashley and stuff like that. And we're actually quite lucky to have the owners that we have, who run the clubs in a sustainable manner.
I agree. I'm going to have somebody take the next question while I just put something out to social media. So, Steve, if you can take over hosting duties for 1 second.
All right, cool. Let's find a comment that we can get stuck into. I saw one a minute ago that I wanted. Oh, Renato. Yeah, so Fabrizio Romano talked about Renato Sanches the other day, didn't he? Again, Liverpool, talking about Barcelona and Liverpool being interested in him. I think, you said it last week, didn't you, Jack? I think he'd be a great fit.
Yeah, I'd love Renato. The more I'm thinking about the window, the more I'm thinking that I doubt Gini will get replaced. I think we will bring a player in, but I think it'll be an attacking player. For me, Renato Sanches, if you're talking about Gini Wijnaldum replacements, and obviously thinking with a realism, with a bit of realism, I think Renato Sanches is probably the best fit. And it's a Cinderella-like signing for me, where the boot fits Renato Sanches perfectly. For me, I would be looking to bring him in if we are looking to replace Gini in this window.
The one that's caught my attention has been the re-links to Doku again. That's the one over the past 24, 48 hours that has kind of caught my attention, because this is where I feel like a hypocrite, Steve. I've seen the next year FC stuff so many times, but sometimes with like Bellingham, or maybe in Doku's case, it's for other reasons, bar us wanting to sign them now. And Doku had been put out there that another year at his club by both him and the club seemed like what both parties wanted. But now we're seeing stuff mentioning 40 to 45 million euro offer would perhaps be acceptable to buy him in this window. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, we've just spent the last 15 minutes talking about a young British wide player, exciting us, and then we're talking about getting in another player who, going to cost 40 or 50 million quid, and is going to take that player's place, arguably, or slow down the development of that player that we've just been excited about for 15 minutes. I don't see any reason to bring in a wide player whatsoever. I think there's. I'd be so surprised, given we know we're not exactly flush for cash this summer. I'd be so surprised if we splashed it on a wide player. I mean, he's a good player, isn't he? But I'd be really surprised.
I think over a wide player, I've said this before, I think I'd rather us get an out-and-out 9, because I think that's the only thing keeping Divock Origi at the club at the moment, the fact that he's something different. For me, we've not even spoken about that yet, but Cade Gordon started over him yesterday, and 16 years old. I think that summed up exactly the role that Origi will have to play at Liverpool this season. And I think should there be a club interested in paying anywhere near the valuation that we have on Divock Origi, then I think he'd be out the door as quickly as possible. But yeah, for me, the wide player one's interesting, because I think we do need a forward. I really think we do. Don't forget.
That's where I'm going. Yeah, I mean, if it's not a wide player, then what is it going to be? Because we have heard the word attacker as a priority thrown around, not just by fan channels or people on Twitter, but genuinely by the media. So if it's not a wide player and we don't really have a 9 or use a 9 in the sense of an Origi type 9, what's the solution, answer, or the plan? I guess that's where I'm going with this.
But I think that's the thing. I think we're not ready to sign a Firmino replacement yet. I think Klopp doesn't want to spend a lot of money on an option that wouldn't be, a plan A. And I think that's why we are keeping Divock Origi around, because I think, he's the only player in the squad really that's that out and out striker, and he therefore offers something different and a plan B potentially. And I think, for bringing in another wide player, I think you're right, Steve, in the fact of what you're saying about Harvey Elliott, but is that why Klopp's playing midfield, to show that actually he can be an option there too, and therefore we need another right-sided player. But then you also look at it and go, well, Mane can play on the right as well. So it's interesting, but I do think we need more options on an attacking front. I think you only have to look at last season when things weren't quite working out for Liverpool, and we didn't have many options on the bench to replace players who were out of form. And if you look at this current Liverpool squad, you don't get me wrong, you are going, well, if Salah's not performing, then, we've got players like Harvey Elliott who can fill his boots. But it's a lot of pressure to put on, a youngster like Harvey Elliott. So I think that goes back to what Craig was saying before about Klopp having a plan for Harvey Elliott, a specific plan, and making sure that, we don't rely on him too much. And therefore, I do think another attacker of some sort, though I'd prefer a player who can play through the middle as an out-and-out striker. I think an attacker of any sort is incredibly important for us going forwards if we are going to challenge on all four fronts this season.
It is, Steve, because, with all due respect, we look at where we're stocked and what positions we have, but the drop-off from, be it a Jota or a Firmino, to a Divock Origi is huge, because Divock Origi is nowhere near the level of that these other guys are performing at. And, I looked at even the 20 million price tag on Origi and I thought, Jesus, is Edwards going to step too far this time? Which sounds really harsh, but he isn't up to scratch. And that's the plain truth of it.
Hey, he got 20 million for Dom Solanke. He can do anything. In 20 million, if you get 20 million for Dom Solanke, you can get 40 for Divock. You're right. The drop-off is massive, isn't it? The drop-off is absolutely massive. And like I said earlier on, when you're chucking Divock Origi on, into a winning team, a team that's, absolutely motoring, the team that won the league, the team that won the Champions League, he can supplement them. He can kind of, sorry. Below 10's not too bad.
Stefan, I've forgotten more about football, mate, than you'll ever know in your life about the game. So don't come at the king, mate, unless you're well equipped. But go on, Steve. Back to your thoughts.
I think you're right. Basically, I was agreeing with Jack. The drop off is too much, and that's where I think the strengthening needs to come down the centre, because I think there's options in the wide areas. Minamino can play down either side. Mane can play down either side. Salah can play either side, arguably. But, there's enough options. Jota can play off either side as well. So, I'd say there's enough options there. And I'd like something, proper big number 9.
Will someone shove Origi into the back of a car and drive him? I mean, that's going a bit too far to the other extent. But
I don't. The thing with Divock Origi is, I think I don't think he's ever done anything but give his best. Though we should say that, shouldn't we? Because he's we know he's probably not good enough to sort of be right at the top. But I don't think anybody could ever say he's not always giving his best. And I think, I agree and I disagree.
I think
you can't agree and disagree.
I do in a way. Part of me agrees. Because there has been periods where Origi has done that, and his head has been in it. But I think, especially if you're looking at last season, I just think there's times when you could just tell he didn't want to play for us, and I think he's incredibly lazy at times too. And I do think
but he's human, isn't he? He's human, and he's barely played for 4 or 5 years. He's human, and I think. I think he's, I think he'll go down. When he leaves, people will think of him fondly because of what he's done.
He's
some of the
a
goals
cult
he
hero.
scored.
Undeniably, he's a cult hero for some of the stuff he's done. I mean,
I heard that wrong. You said cult, and I my mind went elsewhere. Sorry, lads. Look, we've got about 10 minutes or so to try and get through the rest of what may or may not happen in this window, and I've been really impressed with pre-season. I've loved the way we've built up the fitness and getting the guys ready to prime, hopefully, for the start of the season. Do we see a transfer made before the season kicks off, or do we see something that happens maybe towards the end of the window? Because I think there's going to be this has the feeling to me, Steve, as a window that is going to have a majorly hectic end to it right across the board.
Yeah, it feels like there's a bit of unfinished business, and there's going to be one that's going to, it could be the Lukaku one, it could be Harry Kane going, but something's going to set off a big chain reaction, isn't it, somewhere? And we've got to be in the mix for that. I don't think anything will happen before the weekend. I think we'll go into the weekend with what we've got, and it's going to be really interesting, isn't it, to see what kind of team turns out on for the first game, because I was really interested. Did Virgil get about 75 minutes at the weekend?
72.
72,
which is a lot. Like, to be fair, that's got 20, 42, 7.
Yeah.
Like, that's good build up quickly.
It surprised me that he played that first game with Robertson and Trent either side of him, and we seem to think Joel Matip's going to be one of the two centre backs on the first day. It was interesting that he played Virgil, with that, in that defence. So that's going to be interesting. Fabinho's looked ace, hasn't he, since he's come back? He was absolutely bang on it. It's going to be really, really, really interesting. I think there's a ton of options. It's going to be interesting with see how much he, when he feels he can chuck Henderson and Thiago in, because they've obviously come back, a bit later. But yeah, can't wait.
And for you, Jack, do you think it's going to be a hectic end to the window? And do you think we may get somebody in before the season kicks off? Because I'm thinking about Kloppo's comments here, and they very much did lean towards, him hinting that he thinks there's business to be done from our perspective anyway.
Yeah, I think there'll certainly be one incoming before the end of the window for Liverpool. I think I'd be surprised if there's two. I hope there's two personally, but I'd be surprised. But yeah, I certainly think there'll be one. I don't think there'll be one prior to the Norwich game at the weekend, but before the end of the window, I can see us doing a bit of business at least.
Sorry, I'm just trying to be nice to someone without interrupting you guys. There's somebody in the chat there called Louis who's having a birthday, and I just thought I'd try and do something a little bit different for one of our viewers.
To be fair, Craig, that's probably a way forward for YouTubers with the amount of times I see people slipping up these days with certain comments surrounding birthdays and names that people like coming up with.
Oh, mate, I get baited into saying happy birthday to porn stars and stuff by people, or you say hi to my little sister and, all this type of stuff, because, I'm naive in that one. And welcome in JC as well, becoming a member. Thank you very much, buddy. Right, so look, one name. Give me a name, Steve and Jack. Who would you like us and think realistically we could get in over the line between now and the end of the transfer window? And, I'll go first on this one for once. I think, even though I don't think we need or aren't overstacked in midfield, I think that Renato Sanches does have a ring of truth to it. So I would put that as a likely candidate, even though it wouldn't really put too much lead in my pencil. But Steve, how about you?
I'm with you. Same answer. I think he feels like a pretty good fit, doesn't he? And but yeah, like I said, my only. I've said this a few times. I don't really think that's an area that, if we're looking and saying we've got one signing left in us, that's not it for me. But behind bar Vlahovic, I don't really know what we're not getting linked with a load of forwards, are we? We're not seeing that that speculation in the papers. So yeah, I'll be very boring. I'll say the same thing.
Jack, Mr. 6-0 Gill, Mr. All the Photos, Johnny Handbags, whatever name you want to go by this week. What are we thinking?
Johnny Handbags?
Remember, he had a lot of handbags or something hanging up, and he said they were his. They weren't his. You know, he tried to say they weren't his.
For me, you know, if you're looking at a midfield signing, I think it would have to be Renato. I think ideally, I'd like to see Vlahovic bought in. Who do I think we'll get? I think we'll get Jared Bowen. I really do. And that's just the way I see it going. And like I said before, we can name all these players, but realistically, we're going to get Sander Berge and Jared Bowen. And I stand by that.
And you're supposed to be the optimistic one, Jack.
It's going to happen, isn't it?
I could just see. I'm trying to be realistic at the same time. And listen, I am by no means saying that Jared Bowen would be a bad signing for Liverpool, because I do think under Jurgen Klopp it would be a decent signing and a similar signing to the one of Diogo Jota. But you know, it's not the players we've been linked with, is it? And you know, I do feel as though we need a player like Dusan Vlahovic in the team.
There you go. I was waiting for you to bring that, and I was hanging off because I knew you had it in you, Jack. I knew it. I knew you had a bit of Vlahovic there somewhere.
Martinez from Inter. What Martinez from Inter? I feel like he'd be a pretty good fit.
What's going on with that situation? What's going on there, by the way? Because 1 minute, you know, we're not selling anybody. We've sorted out our issues by selling Hakimi. The next minute, I'm reading they could be about to be in liquidation. We know Lukaku's on his way back to Stamford Bridge. So, Lautaro Martinez, if Spurs are having the cheek to go and bid for the fella, I mean,
absolutely,
his wages are meant to be really, really low as well. And you know, apparently he really wants to play in the Premier League. So for me,
wages don't matter, Jack. We pay second highest wage bill in the Premier League, mate. We pay huge wages. Don't worry about wages; they're grand.
I would love Martinez as well. To be honest with you, I think a player like him is exactly what we need. But I don't. It just seems like we're not interested in a player of his caliber, and it's weird. I don't understand it at all. But look, have faith in Jurgen. He's boss. We're class, and we're going to win the league again.
I've got a feeling that this has been delayed for a reason. I can't help but think that all of this is for a reason. I've too much faith in Klopp and Edwards, none of the owners really, but I've too much faith in Klopp and Edwards to think that they are naively just sitting by and allowing Grealish to go and allowing Sancho to go and allowing Lukaku to go and seeing Messi go and all of this stuff and just thinking, yeah, no, we're sound us. I can't help but feel there's either going to be a couple of really low-ball, cheeky late bids to clubs who are in financial pressure. And you know what, Steve? I got to say, if that's the case and we pull it off, my God, am I going to love it? Because I would love to give some payback to clubs that have been cheeky to us before and taken players from under our noses and cherry-picked their best talent. I'd love the shoe to be on the other foot here.
I mean, we've said, haven't we, a couple of times, you know, let's have the transfer conversation at the end of the window, you know, when we know what's happened, because we know that good things will happen right up to the end. Last year, Thiago was late, wasn't he? And Jota was late. You know, we know these things can happen right up to the end. So, you know, while ideally, you know, it'd be great to get it all done on day one of the window, you know, so for pre-season, you've got all your new signings and you're off and away, but it doesn't work like that, does it? You know, clubs are looking to, you know, buy a player to replace a player that you want to buy, and there's a knock-on effect with other clubs and other clubs and other clubs and other clubs. So, yeah, we know it doesn't work like that. So, yeah, let's assess this whole window at the end of the window, because that's the only time we're going to know, isn't it?
Maybe Michael Edwards has just been on annual leave. He's enjoyed the Euros off. He's enjoyed the Olympics stuff.
Probably binge watching Anfield Agenda, to be fair to him.
Exactly. He got Michael, good evening. He sat there with his feet up. You know, he's been watching the new series of Love Island, and he's just toying with the rest of the league. He's just watching all this.
Scribbling now. Hang on. Jack mentioned Vlahovic again, right?
Yeah.
Don't underline that one.
He's got a big photo of Mbappe on his bedroom wall in front of him, and he's just looking at the Messi news and pissing himself laughing because he knows that.
I'd say he's raging now after I wished happy birthday to Louis with the banner that I didn't give him a little mention. Look, I'm going to be recording my preview later on in the week, but I don't know when we'll next have a Cop the Week show, ladies and gents. No doubt will be within the next week. So before I go, I want to come to Steve and Jack for a predicted starting 11 and a score prediction for the Norwich game coming up at the weekend. So, Jack, I know you've certainly thought about this because we spoke about it a little bit. So give me your predicted 11 and none of your 6-0 stuff, mate. Give us a realistic score prediction.
Alisson in goal. I'm going to go Trent right back. I think it'll be Van Dijk and Matip. I think left back, obviously, our man Kostas, the plate thrower. I think Fab's obviously in the 6. I think Naby and James Milner, though I'd love to see Harvey Elliott in there, but I think Milner's had a full pre-season with Klopp, and I think with no Henderson in that midfield, first game of the season, he'll want trusted James Milner in there, and then I think the front three will be Jota, Salah, and Sadio. I think that'll be the lineup for us. But yeah, score prediction. I'm genuine. I don't care about the nickname. I'm genuinely going with 6-0. It's fucking Norwich, and we know our record against. So I think. Listen, though, Salah hasn't scored a single goal in pre-season, so I guarantee that he will get a hat trick against Norwich. Guarantee it.
Guaranteed it, Steve. I mean, it can't be any clearer.
6-0 is happening.
He's my fantasy league captain, so he better do the business on the
same with me.
But, yeah, I would go Alisson, Trent. I think he might stick Konate and Van Dijk in at the back, centre halves.
Van Dijk, brave decision, that one.
I wouldn't have said that until the weekend, but then getting 72 minutes and playing with Trent and Robertson either side of him, particularly, it seemed like he was maybe thinking that was the way forward. Given that, I'm not really sure why I'm not saying Matip, but yeah, I'll say Konate. And then Tsimikas, Fabinho. I think he'll chuck the skipper in, Henderson, and Naby Keita, and then the same front three with our man Bobby on the bench.
And a score prediction?
3-1 Liverpool. I think Norwich will come hard. First game of the season, they'll come up. They've made a few good signings, haven't they?
That's going to get clipped.
They've lost Buendia though as well, which is a big loss for them. Yeah,
but the American lad they brought in, and what's the lad from Germany? Rashica. It was Rashica. Yeah, he's a good player, isn't he?
Oh, we were linked with him at one point. The Werder Bremen player, Milan Rashica, or whatever his name is. Is that him?
Yeah, that's it. They're still shy though. We should absolutely push.
But
to one side.
Difficult game though, isn't it? First game away at a newly promoted side. I think that's
but it's Norwich. But we know our record against Norwich.
Do you know what made me smile listening to both your starting 11s, and I'll probably do the same when I did mine. We started off this stream by blowing so much smoke up Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain's arse about how amazing he's been, and none of us have him in the starting 11.
And then we all want signings.
Yeah, this is it, isn't it? Who'd be
just the wonderful world of fan hypocrisy. Yeah, it is madness. But look, it's been lots of fun, ladies and gentlemen. We will be back. I'll be back tomorrow I'll be on that football actually tomorrow. Sorry, with Mark Olbrich in a watch along of the Super Cup. I will be doing an earlier late night agenda. Jack will be doing some more stuff as the week goes on as well. We've got a nice interview, Jack, that we won't give away too much info on for next week. And thank you to Steve. Thank you to Jack. Thank you to you guys for watching. And hit that subscribe button. Drop a like on the video. Have yourselves an amazing evening. And up the Reds.